History of Egypt. Mystery of ancient pyramids. How were they built? Located in northern Africa, ancient Egypt is a civilization that emerged in the 4th millennium BCE. As new archaeological discoveries reveal more of its mysteries, the intrigue around its great accomplishments preserved in its art and monuments only intensifies. This article covers Egypt's history from prehistoric times to the unification of Egypt under Menes, Narmer, in the 3rd millennium BCE, which is frequently seen as Egypt's historical genesis, and the Islamic invasion in the 7th century CE. Consider ancient Egypt as a desert oasis in northeastern Africa, whose agricultural population was reliant on the Nile River's yearly flooding. The rich floodplain of the Nile Valley, where the river flows between bands of limestone hills, and the Nile Delta, where it fans into many branches north of modern-day Cairo, provided the majority of the nation's wealth. There is a fluctuating region of low desert between the hills and the floodplain, and this area supports some game. Egypt's only route for transportation was the Nile. The only clearly defined barrier within a populated area in the country was the first cataract at Aswan, where a granite band transforms the river into rapids. The somewhat less hospitable territory of Nubia was to the south, where the Nile meandered through low sandstone hills that, in most cases, left only a very little strip of arable soil. Egypt's sporadic southerly expansion and its access to goods from further south depended on Nubia. A network of oases separated the parched Sahara to the west of the Nile River. The region was devoid of all natural resources except a few minerals and stretched between 125 and 185 miles, 200 and 300 kilometers, from the river. The Eastern Desert, which lay between the Nile and the Red Sea, was more significant since it served as a pathway to the Red Sea, was home to a small nomadic population and desert wildlife, and had an abundance of mineral resources, including gold. The majority of Egyptians are most likely derived from prehistoric settlers who settled in the Nile Valley, with natural fertility contributing to population growth. There has been immigration from Libya, Nubia, and the Middle East at different times. They may have helped with population expansion and were important historically, but their exact numbers are unknown. In the Nile Delta and Valley, the majority of people resided in towns and villages, typically constructed of mud brick. Dwellings have long since vanished beneath the rising water table or contemporary town sites, erasing any traces of their presence. Settlements were most often located on slightly elevated land close to riverbanks, where water and transportation were readily available and flooding was unusual, both in antiquity and now. Egypt did not see the same level of urbanization as Mesopotamia until the 1st millennium BC. Rather, the population was distributed fairly evenly over the nation, except for a few centers like Memphis and Thebes that drew the elite. According to estimates, the population increased from 1 to 1.5 million in the 3rd millennium BCE to possibly double that amount in the late 2nd and early 1st millennia BCE. Inequality in labor, wealth, and technology distribution was associated with society's partially urban nature, particularly throughout the 3rd millennium BCE. Instead of being distributed among several provincial cities, the nation's resources were effectively concentrated around the capital, which was more like a dispersed string of settlements than a metropolis, and directed toward the monarch, who was seen to be the center of society. Constructed to last forever, the Giza pyramids have succeeded in doing just that. About 4,500 years ago, during Egypt's Old Kingdom, the colossal tombs were built. The pharaohs of Egypt anticipated rising to godhood in the afterlife. They built enormous pyramid tombs for themselves and temples to the gods as preparations for the afterlife, which were outfitted with everything a monarch would require to reign and survive in the hereafter. The 3 enormous pyramids are only a portion of a much larger complex that also has a palace, temples, solar boat pits, and other structures. Here are some details regarding who constructed them, how they were put together, and the hidden gems we have found within. Who constructed the Giza pyramids? The construction of the Giza pyramids was started by Pharaoh Khufu, the first Egyptian king. Sometime around 2550 BC, his Great Pyramid, the largest in Giza, was formerly around 481 feet, 147 meters, above the plateau. Its smooth casing stones have long since disappeared, making it somewhat shorter today. Each of the estimated 2.3 million stone blocks weighs between 2.5 and 15 tons on average. Around 2520 BC, Chafer, the son of Khufu, constructed the second pyramid at Giza. His graveyard or necropolis is distinguished from the surrounding scenery by the presence of the Sphinx, an enigmatic limestone structure that resembles a lion with a pharaoh's head. While there is no concrete evidence that the king constructed the Sphinx, it may serve as a sentry for the pharaoh's tomb complex, after spending thousands of years buried in the sand with only its head visible until the 1800s. About 218 feet is less than half the height of the first two Giza pyramids, making the third one much smaller. Constructed approximately in 2490 BC by Menkaure, the son of Chefer, the intricate complex of the pyramid consists of 3 different queen's pyramids, as well as 2 independent temples, joined by a lengthy causeway. Menkaure's rooms have niche designs that are exclusive to Giza, and his burial chamber has a vaulted ceiling. In 1838, the ornate sarcophagus of the pharaoh was lost at sea close to Gibraltar. How did the pyramids come to be? The technical achievements of the ancients at Giza were so astounding that it is still unclear to scientists and engineers how the pyramids were constructed. Nonetheless, they now know a great deal more about the individuals who constructed them and the political will required to make it happen. The builders were highly trained Egyptian laborers who inhabited a neighboring makeshift city covering around 17 acres. They were incredibly well fed for their efforts, as evidenced by the bakery's remnants and the mounds of animal bones. The intriguing site is home to archaeological digs that have uncovered a highly resource-rich and organized community that was probably supported by a powerful central authority. Boatmen used the Nile and a network of artificial waterways to transport items to the Giza Plateau, including granite from Aswan quarries, copper cutting tools from the Sinai Peninsula, and lumber from Lebanon, according to records found on ancient papyri and archaeological sites throughout Egypt. They also transported animals from farms close to the Nile Delta to provide for the workers. Communities all around Egypt probably supplied laborers, food, and other necessities for what turned into a kind of national project showcasing the affluence and power of the ancient pharaohs. Engineers and scientists continue to disagree on the precise method used to build the pyramids. Most people agree that the Egyptians used a system of sleds, ropes, rollers, and levers to transport gigantic stone blocks to great heights up lengthy ramps that were lubricated by water or wet clay. Some argue that each pyramid had outside ramps that spiraled or zigzagged around it, while a more contentious hypothesis contends that interior ramps were employed. These building secrets of the pyramids might be hidden below the surface. Maybe in the future, when imaging technology allows us to see the internal block arrangements, it will provide us with a blueprint of how the Egyptian architects put these classic monuments together. According to Harvard University Egyptologist Peter der Manuelian, many people think of the site as just a cemetery in the modern sense, but it's a lot more than that. In these decorated tombs, you have wonderful scenes of every aspect of life in ancient Egypt, so it's not just about how Egyptians died, but how they lived. Images of ancient farmers caring for their crops and cattle, fishing, hunting, carpentry, dressing up, participating in religious rites, and interring their dead are all depicted in tomb art. Studying Egyptian grammar and language is also made possible by inscriptions and manuscripts. Almost any subject you want to study about pharaonic civilization is available on the tomb walls at Giza, der Manuelian claims. The Giza Project, a vast collection of images, blueprints, drawings, manuscripts, object records, and expedition diaries from the world's top institutions, has made many of these rare resources openly available to the public. It is an amazing online repository for anything related to Giza. What more can we learn about the pyramids? There are still many mysteries surrounding the Giza pyramids. Furthermore, even while scientists keep finding new things, a lot of them also bring up fresh problems. Since 2015, the Scan Pyramids Project, an international team operating under the auspices of Egypt's Ministry of Antiquities, has been exploring the pyramids' interiors using cutting-edge technology without ever setting foot inside. Thanks to developments in high-energy particle physics, scientists have been able to use cosmic rays to disclose several previously undiscovered empty spaces that had been concealed for 4,500 years. These areas include a void the size of the Grand Gallery of a pyramid and a different route to the Pyramid of Khufu known as the North Face Corridor. Although it's unclear what's inside, the majority of specialists think these areas are ceremonially meaningless. Rather, they were probably employed in the building process as a precisely designed mechanism to disperse the weight and strain of these recognizable buildings that have unquestionably withstood the test of time. Thank you for viewing. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel for more fascinating things. Please also provide feedback.